The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not the sterile, bitter scent of the hospital pharmacy where I spent 30 years, but the heavy, almost sweet smell of old paper and dust. I was holding a banker's box of my husband Harold's things, a box he had shoved into the back of his closet years before he died on a quiet Tuesday morning. The last page of the small leather ledger inside that box told me not to trust my daughter-in-law Marlene and to save myself. That warning set off a chain of events that ended with Marlene in federal prison, counting penicillin capsules 200 at a time in a smock that says Dispensed My Trust, while every prescription label prints her federal fraud docket number. My name is Evelyn. I am 59 years old. For 3 decades I worked as a hospital pharmacy technician, the woman who counted pills, checked dosages, and made sure the right medication went to the right patient at the right time. The detail that matters later is this. I could spot a 0.5 milligram tablet by feel in my palm. I could read a Medicare remittance advice like a map. I knew how to keep a controlled substance log so clean an auditor would smile. That precision, plus the $132,000 of my own pension that I used to buy an independent compounding pharmacy, is what started all of this. Harold was a quiet architect. He drew load-bearing walls while I counted lisinopril tablets, and we both understood that small errors can collapse something big. We were married for 31 years, and we had one son, Brad, from Harold's first marriage. Brad brought Marlene into our lives 8 years ago, and she brought a business degree and a smile that never reached her eyes. Harold died on a Tuesday. The funeral was on Saturday. At the viewing, while I stood next to the casket, Marlene leaned over and whispered, "Did Harold mention anything about a life insurance policy?" I told her I did not know. She smiled and said, "We should look into that soon." 2 days after the funeral, she was in my kitchen making a list of things I should do. She said, "You should sign a power of attorney, Mom, for your protection. Brad and I can handle everything." That same day, I found the box in the back of Harold's closet under a stack of old architectural drawings. I was looking for his life insurance policy. The box was heavy, and when I sat on the floor and opened it, the smell of old paper rose up like a ghost. At the bottom, wrapped in a piece of yellowed newspaper, was a small black leather ledger. The pages were filled with Harold's handwriting, property records, financial notes, a few small diagrams. Then on the last used page, in his shaky hand, these words: "If I am gone, check the 3rd drawer of my desk before you sign anything. Do not trust Marlene, save yourself." I read it 3 times. Harold was not a dramatic man. He did not write a sentence like that for no reason. I put the ledger in my purse and went straight to his desk. The 3rd drawer was locked. I had never seen a key. I searched for an hour, and then I remembered that Harold kept a small brass key in the battery compartment of an old transistor radio in the garage. It was exactly the kind of hiding place only he would create. I opened the radio, found the key, and unlocked the 3rd drawer. Inside was a manila envelope. Inside the envelope were copies of Medicare remittance reports. They had my national provider identifier number at the top, the unique 10-digit number that identifies a provider to Medicare. The claims listed compounded medications I had never made, for patients I had never seen. There were dozens of them, hundreds. The total at the bottom of the last page, written in Harold's own hand, was $225,000. That number hit me like a truck. I sat on the floor of Harold's office and tried to breathe. Harold had known. He had been watching. He had been quietly gathering evidence while his heart was failing because he did not want to add to my burden. He had not had time to finish. He left me the beginning of an investigation and a warning I could not ignore. I stuffed the envelope back into the drawer, locked it, and put the key in my bra. 30 seconds later, the front door opened. It was Marlene. "Mom, I brought you some soup." Her voice was bright and cheerful. I walked out to the kitchen and smiled. "Thank you, honey. That is so thoughtful." I want to pause here for a moment. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe family should be the one thing you can trust, not the one thing that stabs you in the back. Because that is exactly what was unfolding in that kitchen while I smiled at my daughter-in-law. Now, let me tell you about the manipulation. Marlene moved fast. Within a week, she arranged a meeting at the pharmacy. She and Brad sat me down in the small back office, the same office where Harold used to review monthly profit and loss statements. Marlene had a stack of papers 3 inches thick. She said, "Mom, you have been through so much. Let us take over the business. Brad can handle the day-to-day and I will keep doing the billing. You just sign here and we will take care of everything." She pushed a document across the desk. I looked at it. It was a durable power of attorney. Page 1 gave Marlene authority over all financial accounts. Page 2 authorized her to sell real property. Page 3 included a clause transferring my ownership interest in the pharmacy to Brad and Marlene for the sum of $1. $1. She thought I would not read it. She thought I was too grief-stricken, too tired, too much of a foggy old woman to notice. She was wrong. I smiled and said, "I need a little time. My head is still fuzzy, you understand." I used the word fuzzy on purpose. I wanted her to see me as weak and confused. I shook my head and rubbed my temples. "Maybe next week." Her smile flickered for half a second, then it came back. "Of course, Mom, take all the time you need." 2 days later, they moved me into their house. They said it was for my own good. "You shouldn't be alone," Brad said, and he meant it. He was genuinely worried. Marlene meant something else entirely. In their house, she controlled everything. The mail, the phone, the food, the schedule. She put me in a spare bedroom at the back of the house, a room with a small window and a lock on the outside of the door. It was not a prison, but it was designed to make me feel like a guest, someone without power, someone who needed to be managed. I played along. I shuffled my feet. I let my shoulders slump. I ate her soup and thanked her for it. I hid the envelope from Harold's drawer inside the lining of my suitcase, along with the ledger and the brass key. I wore the key on a ribbon around my neck, under my blouse, and while Marlene thought I was fading, I was working. The first red flag was the phone calls. Marlene had a home office on the first floor, a converted den with a heavy oak door. She kept it closed, but I could hear her voice through the walls. She made calls at odd hours, early in the morning before Brad left for work and late at night after he was asleep. She would start a conversation in a normal tone, then drop to a whisper. I heard words like clawback, audit, recoupment, recovery audit contractor, and overpayment demand. I heard the name of an accounting firm I did not recognize. I heard her say, "I need more time, just give me more time." I started keeping a notebook. I wrote down the date, the time, and every phrase I could catch. I kept that notebook hidden inside a sanitary pad wrapper in my suitcase because I knew she would not go through something like that. I was a pharmacy technician. I knew how to keep a controlled substance log. This was no different. I was documenting evidence. The second red flag was the spending. Marlene bought a new car, a black Lexus SUV. She said it was a lease. She bought new living room furniture, a set of Italian leather sofas that cost more than my first car. She went to New York for a business trip and came back with Tiffany bags. She started talking about a kitchen renovation, a new deck, a membership at a private club. Brad looked confused. "The pharmacy must be doing better than I thought," he said. I knew the pharmacy was not doing better. The pharmacy was bleeding. Clawback notices had started arriving at the house, addressed to me. A clawback is when an insurer or Medicare determines a claim was improper and demands the money back. The first one was for $4,300. The next was for $11,000. Marlene intercepted most of the mail, but I found one envelope in the recycling bin, torn open and discarded. I smoothed it out and read it. The claim number matched a number in Harold's envelope. The medication was a compound I had never made. The reimbursement was $4,300. The notice said the claim was under review for fraud. That was when I understood the full scope of her scheme. She had used my NPI number to submit fake claims for expensive compounded medications. The money went to a shell company called Midwest Healthcare Solutions. She had pocketed the reimbursements. And now Medicare was coming for the money and coming for me because the NPI number was mine. I needed proof, real proof. Not just Harold's copies, but original documents with her signature, her handwriting, her bank account numbers. The opportunity came 2 weeks later. The kitchen sink started leaking. Water was pooling under the cabinet and dripping down to the basement. Marlene was beside herself. She said, "I will call a plumber. It is going to cost a fortune." I said, "Let me look at it." She laughed. No offense, Mom, but you are not exactly a plumber." I did not answer. I got down on my knees in front of the cabinet and looked at the pipes. It was a single-handle kitchen faucet, a moan, and the leak was coming from the base, not the sprayer. I turned off the cold water shutoff valve under the sink, then the hot. I used a pair of slip-joint pliers and a 7/16" basin wrench to loosen the mounting nut. The O-ring on the cartridge had cracked, probably from hard water. I went to the garage, found a replacement O-ring in Harold's old plumbing box, greased it with silicone plumber's grease, and fitted it back into the cartridge. I tightened everything, turned the water back on, and ran the faucet for 2 minutes. No drip. It took me 10 minutes. Marlene stared at me. "How did you know how to do that?" She said it like I had pulled a rabbit out of my pocket. I said, "I pay attention." That was the moment I saw a crack in her confidence. She looked at me differently, like she was seeing someone she had underestimated. I did not care. I had already found her filing cabinet. It was in the home office, behind the desk, a sturdy steel cabinet with a combination lock on the top drawer. I had seen her open it once when she thought I was napping. She spun the dial left 4 times to 4, right past 7 twice, left to 2, right to 9. I memorized the exact number of turns, the way I used to memorize drug interaction lists. The next day, when she went to the grocery store, I went into the office. I knelt in front of the filing cabinet. My hands were steady. I turned the dial, 4729. The lock clicked open. Inside were files, dozens of them. The first one I pulled out was labeled MHS Corp., Midwest Healthcare Solutions, the shell company. Inside were bank statements, invoices, and a series of wire transfer confirmations. The transfers went from the pharmacy's business account to MHS, then from MHS to Marlene's personal account. The amounts matched the fake Medicare claims, dollar for dollar. I took my phone out of my pocket and photographed every page. I worked quickly and carefully, the way I used to count narcotics under a pharmacist's watchful eye. I replaced every file exactly where I found it. Then I closed the cabinet and spun the lock. The next file I found was in the bottom drawer. It was labeled NPI Audit. Inside were letters from Medicare, audit requests, and a document with my signature on it. I looked closer. The signature was a crude forgery. It looked like my name, but the loops were wrong, the pressure was uneven. It was a document authorizing Marlene to act as my billing agent. I had never signed it. Harold had never signed it. But there it was, with my name on it, in ink that was not mine. I photographed that too. That was when I found the shredder. It was a small, cheap model, the kind you buy at an office supply store. It was full. The bin underneath was overflowing with thin, cross-cut strips of paper. Marlene had been destroying evidence, but she had not emptied the bin. I reached in and pulled out a handful of strips. They were from a bank statement. I could see the logo and part of an account number. I put the strips in a plastic bag and hid the bag inside the lining of my suitcase. That night, I used clear packing tape and a small flashlight to piece together 3 strips from the same page. It was a wire transfer confirmation from the pharmacy account to MHS Corp. In the amount of $11,400, the exact amount of the clawback notice I had found in the recycling. I photographed the reconstructed page. I heard the garage door open and had exactly 40 seconds to slide the bag back into the suitcase, turn off the flashlight, and get into the bathroom. My heart was pounding at 120 beats a minute. I flushed the toilet so she would hear a normal sound. Then I sat on the edge of the tub and breathed until my hands stopped shaking. That same night, after the house went quiet, I opened the pharmacy's billing portal on my laptop. Harold had taped a list of passwords to the inside of the ledger's back cover. I logged in with his credentials. The direct deposit information had been changed. It now listed a routing number for a small regional bank in Ohio. The bank name matched the logo on the shredded statement. The account name was Midwest Healthcare Solutions. I took screenshots of every page, saved them to a hidden folder, and deleted my browsing history. That was when I knew I had enough to go to the authorities. But I needed one more thing. I needed to know what Harold had done. I needed to find the countermeasure. I went back to the pharmacy alone on a Sunday morning. Marlene thought I was at church. The pharmacy was closed. I used my key to get in. I went to the back office. Harold's desk was still there, a heavy oak roll top, the third drawer now empty. I sat in his chair and looked around. There were old ledgers on the shelf, framed photographs on the wall, a small brass plaque that said Halstead Family Pharmacy, ESD, 2019. I remembered something Harold had said to me years ago when we first bought the business. The real asset is not the building, Evie. It is the license, the NPI number, the relationships with the insurance companies. That is the thing they cannot take from you unless you let them. I looked at the desk. The third drawer was open. I pulled it out all the way. Behind the drawer in the cavity of the desk was a small flat object taped to the underside. I reached in and pulled it free. It was a USB drive, black and silver, the size of my pinky finger. I drove home. I plugged the drive into my laptop. It contained 2 folders. The first was labeled insurance. Inside was a life insurance policy. The beneficiary was me. The amount was $500,000, but there was a rider I had never seen before. The rider stated that the policy was held in an irrevocable trust, and the trustee was not a person but a condition. The funds would be released to me, and only to me upon my written request and a voice verification, delivered in person at the office of the trust administrator. No one else could access the funds. No power of attorney could override it. No forged signature would work. It required my physical presence, my face, my voice, and a phrase Harold had chosen years before. Harold had set it up that way. He had known. I called the trust administrator, a woman named Patricia, from a pay phone outside a gas station so the call would not show up on Marlene's phone records. Patricia confirmed what the policy said. Harold had set up a voice biometrics protocol. He had recorded the phrase in his own voice, and the system would only release funds if I appeared in person, showed identification, and repeated the exact phrase. Patricia said, "Mrs. Halstead, your husband was very specific. He told me, and I quote, 'My wife will know when the time is right. No one else can touch a dime.'" I thanked her and hung up. I sat in the car and cried, not for myself, for Harold, because he had spent his last months watching all of this unfold, gathering evidence, trying to protect me, and he had not been able to tell me. He had had to leave clues. He had had to trust that I would find them. The second folder was labeled Marlene. Inside was a single document, a letter from a private investigator named Gerald. Harold had hired him months before he died. Gerald had followed Marlene for weeks. The letter detailed her shell company, her bank accounts, and her history of similar fraud at a previous employer, a charge that had been settled quietly with a non-disclosure agreement. It was all there. Every piece of evidence, assembled by a dying man who wanted to protect his wife. Harold had seen this coming. He had built a dead man's switch, but he had not activated it. He had left it for me to find. I sat in that spare bedroom in my daughter-in-law's house and cried. Then I dried my eyes and made a plan. But first, I needed to test Marlene. I needed to see what she was truly capable of. I needed to know if there was any humanity left in her. I staged a medical scare. I waited until we were alone in the kitchen one afternoon. I clutched my chest and stumbled, grabbing the edge of the counter. I made my voice weak. "Marlene, help, I can't breathe." I slid to the floor, my back against the cabinet, my legs splayed out. I kept my eyes open but unfocused, the way I had seen cardiac patients do in the emergency room just before a code team arrived. Marlene turned around. She looked at me. She did not move. Her face was blank. Then she looked past me at the kitchen table where I had left an empty manila envelope, the same kind of envelope from Harold's desk. She did not know it was empty. She stepped over my legs, not around them, over them. Her foot nudged my knee as she passed, a small push to move me out of the way like I was a piece of furniture. She walked to the table, picked up the envelope, and held it to her chest. Then she looked back at me, still on the floor. "Are you going to die, Mom?" she said. "Because if you are, that would solve a lot of problems." That was it. That was the moment I knew there was no humanity left in her. She was a predator and I was her prey. I stood up slowly, my hand on the counter. "I'm fine," I said. "Just a dizzy spell." She smiled. "Good, grab me a soda while you're up." I got her the soda. I went back to my room. I opened my laptop and started writing an email to the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, and to the Office of Inspector General hotline for the Department of Health and Human Services. I attached the photographs, the audited remittance reports, the forged signature, the bank statements, the reconstructed shredder page, and the screenshots from the billing portal. I included a note. "My name is Evelyn Halstead. I am a licensed pharmacy technician and the owner of Halstead Family Pharmacy. I am reporting an ongoing fraud scheme involving Medicare reimbursement claims submitted under my NPI number. The fraudulent claims were submitted by Marlene Halstead, who is not a healthcare provider and has no authority to submit claims. The total amount exceeds $225,000. The funds were diverted to a shell company controlled by Marlene Halstead. I am providing audited remittance reports and supporting evidence. I request an immediate investigation." I hit send. Then I called the bank. The bank where the pharmacy's business account was held. I asked to speak to the compliance officer. His name was David. He sounded young and serious. I told him everything. I told him about the shell company, the wire transfers, the forged signature. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Mrs. Halstead, I need you to come in person, bring the documents." I went the next day. I brought the USB drive, the photographs, the forged documents, the plastic bag of shredded paper. David met me in a private conference room. He had 2 other people with him, both in dark suits. They looked at everything. They asked questions. They took notes. And then they told me something I did not expect. "Mrs. Halstead, this is not the first time we have seen this pattern. We have been monitoring an account that matches your daughter-in-law's shell company. She has made multiple deposits just under $10,000, which suggests structuring to avoid currency transaction reports. The federal government has an interest in this." The federal government? I had stepped into something bigger than I knew. They asked me to help. They needed one final piece of evidence. They needed Marlene to attempt to access the funds, to make a transaction, to prove intent. They needed a controlled opportunity. They needed me to be there. A special agent from the Department of Health and Human Services, a woman named Torres, was on a conference call from the regional office. She explained that they had been building a case for months, but my evidence was the missing piece. They wanted me to wear a small digital recorder hidden under my blouse and to let Marlene take me to the trust administrator. I agreed. I did not hesitate. I had no more loyalty left to give. The next week, Marlene made her move. The clawback notices had escalated. Medicare had issued multiple overpayment demands totaling more than $86,000. The pharmacy's business account was frozen due to an audit hold. A supplier had cut off credit for compounded medications. Marlene was panicked. She came to me with a stack of papers and a fake smile. "Mom, we need to go to the bank. Right now. You need to sign these documents so I can access the trust account. The pharmacy is in trouble. I need to move some money around just to cover the gaps. You do not want to lose everything, do you?" I looked at the papers. They were a request to release funds from the Harold Halstead Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust. The distribution amount was $500,000. The payee line had been filled in with Marlene's name. She had even arranged an appointment with the trust administrator. I said, "Okay, let's go." She drove. Brad stayed home. It was just the 2 of us in the black Lexus SUV. She was tense, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. She said, "I am so glad you are finally being reasonable, Mom. This is the right thing to do." I did not answer. I looked out the window and watched our town go by. The pharmacy on the corner, the church where Harold's funeral had been held, the park where we used to walk on Sunday evenings. I thought about Harold. I thought about the words he wrote, "Save yourself." I had the recorder taped to the inside of my bra, the same place I had hidden the key. It was running. We arrived at the bank. It was a grand old building with marble floors and high ceilings. The trust administrator's office was on the 3rd floor. Marlene walked beside me, her heels clicking on the marble. She held the door for me. She was smiling. She thought she had won. The administrator's office was small and quiet. Patricia, the woman in the gray suit, sat behind a desk. She asked for my identification. I gave her my driver's license. She asked me to state my name, date of birth, and a voice verification phrase into a small microphone attached to a computer. The phrase was something Harold had chosen. "Harold, the bluebird sings at dawn." I said it clearly. The screen flashed green. Then Patricia handed me a pen and placed a document in front of me. "Mrs. Halstead, this is the release form. If you sign, the funds will be transferred as directed." Marlene leaned forward. Her voice was sharp. "Sign it, Mom." I looked at the pen. I looked at the document. I looked at Marlene. I said, "No." The word hung in the air. Marlene's face went pale. "What do you mean, no? Sign the damn paper." I put the pen down. "I am not signing anything, and you are not leaving here with a penny." She laughed, a short, ugly sound. "You stupid old woman, you don't know anything. Sign the paper or I will make your life a living hell." I looked her in the eye. "I know about the fake claims. I know about Midwest Healthcare Solutions. I know about the $225,000. I know you forged my signature. I know everything." The door opened. 2 federal agents in dark suits walked in, followed by a uniformed bank security officer. The lead agent held up a document. "Marlene Halstead, you are under arrest for healthcare fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft." It was over. The agents moved toward her. She screamed. She tried to run, but the room was small and the door was blocked. She was trapped. The agent read her Miranda rights while she struggled. Her face was a mask of fury and fear. As they led her past me, she lunged. "You did this, you ruined me." I did not flinch. I said, "No, Marlene, you did this to yourself." I just turned over the audited remittance reports. They took her away. Brad arrived 20 minutes later, confused and terrified. I told him what I had found. He sat down in the bank lobby and cried. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear I didn't know." I believed him. Brad was not a criminal. He was just a man who had married one. He would have to live with that. The aftermath was not quick. It took months. The federal investigation was thorough. They found everything. The shell company, the bank accounts, the fraudulent claims, the forged signatures, the stolen money. Marlene was indicted on 17 counts of healthcare fraud and wire fraud. She pleaded not guilty. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified. I sat in the witness box and explained in detail how a CMS 1500 claim form works. I explained what a remittance advice is, how an NPI number is linked to a provider, and how a shell company can receive electronic funds transfers through an ACH network. I showed the jury the photographs, the documents, the bank statements, the reconstructed shredder page, and the screenshots from the billing portal. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. The judge ordered restitution. The money was recovered, all $225,000 plus penalties, from the shell company's accounts. Medicare dropped the clawback notices. The pharmacy was cleared. My NPI number was restored. The local newspaper ran a front-page story about the fraud and the conviction. Brad filed for divorce within a month, and Marlene's name became a warning in our town. And then there was the pill-counting machine. No, I did not literally seize a machine. What I did was better. After the trial, I restructured the pharmacy. I renamed it Compound of Deceit Pharmacy. The name is on the sign outside in clean black letters. Every prescription label now includes a line at the bottom in small print. Fraud docket number 324CR001589. That is Marlene's docket number. Her federal case number. It prints on every bottle, every vial, every box. And Marlene, she works in the prison's pharmacy. It is a low-security federal correctional institution, and they have a small infirmary. Inmates who are trained and supervised can work there. Marlene counts pills, penicillin capsules, 200 at a time. She wears a beige smock like any pharmacy smock, but it has a patch on the chest. The patch is red thread on beige twill, sewn above the left breast pocket. It says Dispensed My Trust. I arranged that. The prison warden is a patient of mine. He filled a prescription for lisinopril at my pharmacy. I told him the story. He made a phone call. Now Marlene wears that smock every day. The other inmates call her Doc. It is not a term of respect. Harold's life insurance trust paid out to me in full in person at the administrator's office. The voice verification still made me say the phrase about the bluebird. I used the money to pay off the mortgage on our house and to make a donation to a scholarship fund for pharmacy technicians. I kept the pharmacy. I run it myself now with the help of a licensed compounding pharmacist named Susan. We are small. We are careful. We are clean. I think about Harold every day. I think about the way he planned, the way he protected me. He could not stop what was coming, but he made sure I had the tools to stop it myself. He left me a warning, a key, a drive, and a dead man's switch. He trusted me to be the woman he married, the woman who counts the pills and checks the dosages and makes sure the right thing goes to the right person. Family is supposed to be the place where you can let your guard down. But sometimes, the person who smiles at you across the dinner table is the person who is forging your signature in the next room. Trust is not an inheritance. It is a living thing you have to water and weed, and when someone poisons it, you do not ignore the dead leaves. You follow the roots, you document the damage, and you cut it out at the stem. Integrity is not about being nice. It is about being precise, being watchful, and being willing to say no at the exact moment it matters most. Have you ever discovered a dark secret about someone you trusted completely? How did you handle it? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If you made it to the end of this story, you are exactly the kind of person who understands that the truth is not always pretty, but it is always worth it. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about betrayal, justice, and the quiet power of paying attention. Your support helps me keep telling these stories. And to everyone watching, remember, the best time to check the third drawer is before you sign anything. I'm Evelyn, and I'll see you in the next video.